Hello, this is Elena Furman from the HDF group, and I'm very happy that we have today our first seminar. This is the first in our series of webinars on HDF5. The webinars will include the talks about enhancements that we added to the library in the past few years and our plans for the future releases. We also plan to give several tutorials on HDF5, and if you are interested, please check announcements on forum and on our website. And we also, when we finalize the schedule for the rest of the month, we'll put it on our website too. So just some logistics for this presentation. I would like to take questions at the end of the presentation, but you may start typing them as I go, so we will not lose. And you may also point to the slide number when you have a question. And at the end, we will try to go through all questions that we have. If we run out of time, we will answer them and we'll post answers on the website and with the recording of this webinar. Also, please don't hesitate to suggest topics for the future webinars so we can prioritize our topics. And of course, we would like to have feedback on the webinar, and all aspects of HDF5, of course, are more than welcome. So with this, I will start, and I hope you have a chance to look at our, to read our mission statement that I posted here. And I posted it for really good reason, because we want to fix some confusion that we created last year among our users, and not only confusion, but a lot of anxiety. So just to emphasize, HDF5 software is free to everyone. Any new features, security patches, bug fixes, performance improvements, we make available to all our users, and we do it through our HDF5 source code and binary releases that you can find on our portal, and the link is here. Hope you by now you know where to find our software. Releases are regular. They're scheduled for May and November of each year. This is for maintenance releases, and later in the talk I will explain our terminology. We also come with major releases, and they are announced on when we are ready, and one of those releases are coming in September, so stay tuned. You probably also noticed that we now ask you to register on our website, and this is only when you go to download software, it's only related to downloading our binaries. We would like to know first who our users are and what kind of demand we have on different type of binaries. And if you are more common, if you feel more comfortable to get source from the source repository, our repository is open to everyone, and the link is provided here. You can go to repository, and I will have slides late in the talk that I hope will help you navigate our repository, because it's not intuitive due to many releases, many versions, and what we are doing with HDF5 software. So the goal of today's presentation is really not to talk about the features of the new upcoming releases. As I said, it will be later with the webinars, but help you to decide, provide you with enough information to help you to decide when and how to move to new major releases, so you can navigate through releases versioning and provide some guidance on moving application to a new HDF5 release that is actually applicable to any type of releases and any type of versioning. So going forward, you will have enough background information to what to expect, and how to troubleshoot, and where to get help. And at the end of the talk, I will present HDF5 Roadmap that will hopefully give you insight what is coming. And as I said, more information will be in our webinars later in the year and next year. So the first thing, why we still have so many versions, and what is going with HDF5. And we have extensions to file format and so on. HDF5 was released in 1998. But it's still under very active development to address new demands that our community and our customers present to us, new requirements. There are new requirements of different types of data storage like cloud and object store. There are new requirements for speed of access to data, new requirements for management data, and we add those new features. And sometimes those features and performance improvements and even bug fixes, it is almost legacy software, require file format changes, API changes, or adding new APIs. We have to change public structures and so on. And we understand that when our users use software and many of them use in production for their own software, our changes create disruption in your development process. So as a group, HDF5 developers are committed to minimum disruption to your development process, and we try our best to achieve this. And what are our guiding principles when we modify software? What do we promise to our users? First of all, for file format, we promise to you that every time when you get new version of the library and compile and link your application with it, your application will read files created with the older version. So we are always backward compatible in this sense. And if your application doesn't use new features of the new library and you link it with the new version of the library, your application still will create files that are compatible with the older version. So we are forward compatible with the file format if no new versions, no new features that require file format changes are used. In terms of library APIs, an application written with the older library, for the older library will always compile and link with the new library, but you may go through some small steps to achieve this goal. But it really creates minimum disruption you do not need to rewrite your applications all the time, and I will show in the demo what kind of steps you can take to move your applications to the newest versions of the library quickly and efficiently. So the next slide will explain in more detail how we achieve HDF5 backward forward compatibility, and I will talk about first release versioning so you understand what you can expect from releases based on the versioning. I will also talk about development and release process so you can navigate through our Bitbucket repository, and at any time you can check out the version with the bug fixes or whatever is appropriate if you want to stay on top of the HDF5 development. I would also touch base on file format versioning and API versioning once again to help you. This information will help you to make quick decision and when to move and how to move, what you should expect, what type of work you need to do when you go to the new version of HDF5. So first, let's talk about HDF5 releases versioning. On our website, you can find the document that is called HDF5 Library Release Version Numbers. When we started working on HDF5 software in 1997, we decided to adopt for versioning a new format of versioning that consists of three numbers, X, Y, Z, and sometimes we use suffix. X is called major version, Y is minor version, and Z is release number. And we use suffix for software snapshots, and release candidates. Unfortunately, the form we adopted 20 years ago doesn't really work well, as we discovered. And first of all, we may confuse you the way we refer to our own releases. For example, we will say 1.10.0, we call it a major release based on third zero number, and 1.10.5 will be maintenance release. 1.10.5 zero snapshot, it's first software snapshot after 1.10.5 release, and you may find it on our web, on our FTP servers when we provide snapshots of the software. And we usually announce on forum, here is our pre-release candidate. For example, on this slide is the second pre-release candidate of the 1.10.6 maintenance release. So what we discovered also, except that we referring not based on our versioning to our releases, that the first number X didn't change in 21 years. It was designed to change only when there are big file format changes are done and architectural APIs change. And because we're sticking to our backward forward compatibility principle, we are not reinventing HDF5 6. There will be no HDF5 6. It's HDF5 that is evolving format, and with the principle of backward forward compatibility, we want to keep it this way. We promise that you will always access files in your applications, always will be you'll be able to use them with minimum disruption. A Y version is even always and increased by 2 when any of the following changes are present in the new release. First of all, there are some changes and extensions to the file format that accommodate new feature. There are changes to public structures, changes to API's default signatures, and there are big architectural changes in the library. I want to emphasize then, to those releases we now refer as a major release. So, for example, 1.8.0 was major release, 1.10.0 was major release. Those releases are not application binary interface ABI compatible with the previous version. Like 1.10 is not 1.10.0, and the line of 1.10.0 releases are not ABI compatible with 1.8 releases because of changes in the signatures, in the structures, and new features we add that require file format extension. Mostly every 6 months we release XYZ, that Z is increased by 1. And those are maintenance releases that include bug fixes, new features in APIs, and performance improvements. New features and APIs and performance improvements, I want to emphasize, do not require changes as listed above that trigger a really major release. And those should be ABI compatible with a series of releases and with the same Y number. Unfortunately, sometimes we violate this process. We became much more conscious about this. We do provide ABI reports with the release notes on our website. We provide them with snapshots and pre-release candidates. So we appeal to community. If you see something wrong, if you see something with change that really affects you, please let us know as quickly as possible. We can fix it. Or sometimes we'll say, sorry, this is the issue because it was major bug that affects too many people and we have to release it in this release. Otherwise, we have corrupted data or people cannot access the data. So sometimes it happens, but we now are much more conscious about ABI compatibility of our releases. So now let's talk a little bit about our development process, because if you go to our GitHub, Bitbucket, which is Git-based repository, you may be surprised that it's not kind of conforming to what you will see in other Git repositories and even Git recommended practices. This is the reason is that it is legacy of 30 years development of HDF software, because our first HDF package was source control which was available in 1988. Then we moved to SVN and we established our processes in our development process. And when we moved from SVN to Git, we kind of inherited organization of the software and organization of the development process and release process. So to help you navigate, it's very quick overview, but I hope it will help you with our repository if you decide to get code from there, or if you decide to contribute to HDF5. All development, everything is coming first to develop branch. We do have new features that developed in feature branches, and I will not show them here. Even you will see new features. But first you develop, we have developed branch, and at some time T1, we create a new branch, and it's marked here as green, and it was many years ago, more than 10 years ago, it was HDF5 1.8 branch. that we call maintenance branch. From when we create the branch, we change the version in our development branch, and it became at that time 1.9, and snapshots were changing the last where you see asterisk. From 1.8 branch, we start releasing our 1.8 series of releases, and at time very shortly after time T1, 1.8.0 came out, and it came from 1.8 branch. Development process and maintenance process is going on, so we have bug fix A that always comes to develop branch if it exists in develop branch. Then it propagates to appropriate maintenance branch, and in this it is 1.8. At time T2, and it was time for 1.10 release, we created 1.10 branch, and version in develop became 1.11. So you see why we have even numbers for maintenance releases, because we keep odd numbers for identifying snapshots and kind of micro releases from develop branch. Anytime we can introduce new API, and as I said, if new API is not disruptive, it can go even to maintenance release. And if we now support two branches, 1.10 and 1.8 for maintenance releases, and that new API may go to 1.8 release. And this is what is happening right now, for example, with direct chunk read and write APIs. So at this time, in 1.10, we have bug fix A and F, and we have 1.10 release, that 0 release that had those features. When we develop new feature, we develop it, as I told you, in the feature branch. But when it's ready and passes all daily tests, it is merged into develop branch. And at time T3, when we create new release, new maintenance release, and next one will be 1.12 series of releases, that branch will be, that feature and bug fix and new APIs will be available in that new branch. New feature, depending on new feature, it may go to other branches, but it may not. So in this picture, it's only available in 1.12 release. And meanwhile, releases from 1.8 and 1.10 continues, bug fixing is continuous, and bug fixes are going to the branches where do they belong. So it's pretty complex development process, but summary is that everything first included in develop branch, bug fixes if they exist there, because of course there can be bugs introduced in just maintenance branches. But this is the general flow of the features, new APIs and bug fixes that are going into our releases. You will see that now 1.8 will be, we will drop 1.8, and for obvious reason, it will happen next year. We announced that it should be this summer, but there was a reason we still continue 1.8. We simply do not have bandwidth, and cost of maintenance of many branches, obviously, is very high. So we try to move our users to new releases as soon as conditions are good, and this summer we couldn't drop 1.8 by the reason of performance. But I will talk about this a little bit later, and now go back to file format versioning. In HDF5, as I mentioned, there will be no HDF5 6. That's why file format is just one version. What is happening when we need to add new features? We use micro versioning. Each object and structure within HDF5 file is versioned. We published our file format specification every time we do major release. Of course, there are small tweaks here and there, but with every major release, we tell you which features require file format changes. We'll create files that will be incompatible with the previous versions. And each object, specific object in file format, you will see may have versions 1, 2, now 3, and 4. what you should remember that there is no way to find what version of HDF5 library created or modified particular file. Even if you take 110 or develop branch, which has all new features, and you may create files that are still readable by version 1.2 of the library, because it depends what kind of objects reside in the file, what their version number is. Specific features usually trigger a specific new version of the object. We created a document which is called Setting Bounds for Object Creation in 1.10.0. This document describes which APIs trigger which microversioning of particular object, for example, data type, dataset chunking. And it also gives you some overview which minimum version of the library would be required if you use this particular feature. We were requested to provide a tool that will tell, for example, look at the file and tell me which version of the library I need, which minimum version of the library I need to read this file. This document is the first step in that direction, but we always recommend just use the latest version and you will be able to read any file that comes in your way, file of unknown provenance, which library created, which library modified it, because new library can add to the old file new objects, and some objects still will be readable by older versions, but new objects will require new version of the library. So, as I said, we adhere to the maximum. We would like to have file format forward compatibility, which is very hard to achieve. We adhere to the maximum file format compatibility principle, which reads as it's written here. So by default, files that are written with the earliest version of the object that describe information, rather than always using the latest possible. As an example, in 1.8, we introduced better, more compact storage for the groups. But if you use your application with 1.8 and don't specify that you want to use the latest feature, library will create files that still will be readable by the earliest, like 1.2, 1.4, 1.6 versions of the library. So this principle kind of assures best forward compatibility for older versions. You have MATLAB that is linked with the old version of the library. You use a new version of HDF5, or you got files created by new versions. They still can be read by some tools that link with the earlier versions. In 1.10.2, we finally provided a mechanism to control objects versions based on major releases of 1.8, 1.10, and 1.12. And going forward, we will be paying more attention and more backward forward compatibility testing to assure this file format forward compatibility. So in application, for example, if you want to assure that I want to create files that any application linked with 1.8 will read, we provide API that will, first of all, prevent of using the features that require extensions to the file format that 1.8 is not aware of. And it also will assure that files created will use the best features of 1.8, and 1.8 applications will read it. So, and I will show you in the demo. Now, I mentioned that sometimes we have to change APIs, and 1.8 was the biggest disruptive release in this sense, because we introduced versioning to many common APIs. For example, in 1.6, in the first releases of HDF5, we had only H5G create. In 1.8.0, we have H5G create with the versions 1, 2, and some APIs in 1.12 will have even version 3 for references. Why we need to do this? Because new features that we're adding may require we cannot trigger those features without changing signature. And example of those features for group creation are listed in this slide, like creation order of the links in the group, enabling Unicode names, compact storage for the group to save space, and use different algorithms in searching links, and intermediate group creation. We provide the complete description of how we use macros in document that is available on our website. By default, when you get to the new release, macro like H5G create will be mapped to the latest version of the function. In 1.10 and in 1.12, it's still H5G create 2. But if you have application that still uses 1.6 signature, no problem. I'll show you how you move your application without much trouble to 1.10 or even later. So migration guidance. Always we encourage you to use latest release. You can find release-specific information from the page where we describe very carefully which features are added with the references to design documentation, to the reference pages, and also there will be indication if you use this new feature, you may create file that is not compatible with the previous releases of HDF5 library. Generally, if you're using previous releases of 1.10, and for example, we'll be coming with 1.10.6 release. 1.10 releases are ABI compatible, and you should be able just to relink your application without recompiling it. And as I mentioned, that we provide ABI reports on our website and in the software changes from release to release document. And that document, we have such document for every major release, for every line of 1.10, 1.12, or 1.8, there will be such documents. So we are working on 1.12 document right now. If you're using 1.8 or earlier, you will need to recompile your application because major releases are not ABI compatible. And issues you may encounter that you need to take in consideration when to move to 1.10 or 1.12 are the following. First of all, there is a performance drop in current 1.10 releases compared to 1.8. Then application will not compile due to API change. You may encounter this problem. And application may create files that cannot be read by the earliest version of the library. So it will be file format forward compatibility issue. In the next slides and demo will show you how to overcome those issues. So first of all, performance problem with the latest 1.10. For some use cases in 1.8 and earlier versions, some use cases perform better. And this is an example we compiled with one of the use cases that creates a lot of small data sets and a lot of order of thousands. 1.6 performance was 4 times better than 1.10.2 performance. We start addressing these issues. We are aware of those issues, and we hope by the end of the year to move at least into 1.8.21 rate. But what we need help from you. When you moved from one release to another or try to decide, please try the release, try to measure time and report any problems you see, because we cannot test everything. And for many years, this problem between 1.8 and 1.10 went, frankly speaking, quite unnoticed. Internally, we are setting up performance framework to catch such issues quickly so we can address them in timely manner and not discover 10 releases later. But we need your help in terms of use cases so we can add to our framework and watch carefully the performance. And as I said, we are working on solutions and we will solve this problem. So we encourage applications to use the latest versions of APIs, but we understand that unfortunately it may not be possible. And especially when, if you use pre-built binaries, someone installed it for you or you grab it from our website and you still are on 1.6 release, but you know that 1.8 or 1.10 address specific bug or specific security issue, vulnerability issue that you're concerned. We provide a compiler's flag that will allow you to use the version API your application uses. And examples are shown here. Or you can configure, if you build your library yourself, you can configure the library with the API version you want, like here with default API version 1.8. And in libhdf5 setting file that you can find when you install the library or when you grab our binaries, so in lib directory, there is this file, and towards the end of this file, you will see with which default API version the library was built in. And we provide document API compatibility macros on our website. You can go and read more about this, but really for quick start, this is the only information you need to know to convert your applications from old version of HDF5 library to use new version of HDF5 library. Now quickly, how it may happen that you break file format forward compatibility, how it may happen that application link with compiled and link with the new version of the library creates files that older version of itself cannot read. And it may happen only in two ways. If, for example, when you use version 1.8, you decided to take advantage of the latest file format and you use function that we provided at the time, h5p set libver bounds, and you told the library use the latest versions of every object when creating the file. So when the application was moved to 1.10 or 1.12, it means library is still using the latest version, but the latest version of the object in 1.12 may not be the same as latest version in 1.8. That's why in 1.10.2 we finally fixed that issue, and we provided specific lib version numbers that you can use as a low boundary in this API to specify exactly which version of the library is the minimum version that should be able to read this file. And another way to trigger, of course, to use new features. For example, in 1.10, virtual data sets required, file format changes, single writer, multiple reader access required, file changed, page delocation, and other improvements. They are clearly marked in the document with a red asterisk, so we warn our users. And of course, you ask, okay, I created this new file. What can I do now? How I can share it with the people who still use old versions, say, of MATLAB? And we provide several means to do this. First of all, your best friend will be H5 Repack. You may use -L flag to change layout when you're repacking VDS to bring all pieces of virtual data set into the file. Or you can say, rewrite the file and use the high, which is actually, so high version will be lib version 1.8, meaning that we're rewriting the file, and the highest that object that can be there, it should be accessible by version 8. So, or everything that can be accessed earlier. This has downside, this approach, because H5 Repack will rewrite all data, and if you have petabyte file created by Swimmer, it's not an option, or it will take forever. So we provided another tool called H5 Format Convert that downgrades a file created by the Swimmer access to 1.8 compatible format. It doesn't rewrite the raw data, it just rewrites metadata of the file, and it does it in place. So the downside of this approach is that you are touching already existing file and things may happen. So maybe you should do backup before you use the tool. And the tool doesn't affect VDS. It was really created to address swimmer mode access. Sometimes we have something happens, and when file is accessed in swimmer mode, file becomes inaccessible because of the flag we set, so no one can read it. And H5 clear repairs the file. It clears the flag, allows other readers and writers, even in regular mode, to come and open the file. And it also used to remove cache images. It's another feature that will not be compatible with the earliest version of the libraries. And if you find that you have situation that you have new file and you cannot use those tools to make it accessible to earliest version, please let us know. We may tweak one of those tools, or we may create new tool. We know how to do this. So now this is the time for demo, and what I would like to show you, just to go through the troubleshooting process you can encounter when you are moving your application to latest version. This is approach, even I use specific numbers here, this is approach you probably will go depending on the particular version of the library. And I will not do the last bullet because I didn't prepare it. But it will be, so now I'm going, I hope I'm still logged in. So, it's good, okay. So in this directory, I installed software 110, latest versions of 110, maybe pre-latest on 1.6 and 1.8. And I took example from 1.6 and just for sake of less typing, rename it to GC. But this is really the same as examples that I took from 1.6 distribution. So if I do diff with this, let me see. And I believe it is, okay, software where the whole, okay, I will go to installation of 1.6. 1.6, there will be examples directory, and there will be example H5 group.c. You will still should, okay, there is no such file. Let me see what I'm doing wrong. Effect of demo. So what is? Okay, I will do, so believe me, I will not spend time, but this is the same as H5 group.c that you can find in 1.6 distribution. So if I do grep H5 from G.C example, you will see it is a typical application that uses all kinds of functions that most commonly used functions like gcreate, dopen, dcreate, and those APIs were versioned in in version 1.8. So now if I decide, so let me first build this application with I have compiler scripts that point to previous versions, like H5CC6. It points to the installation. It's a soft link to H5CC that comes with 1.6 distribution. So I will use this command to compile my program, and I will run it. I will run it. Now I will run it. It creates some output, and it also created file called group H5. And this is a file created with the version 6. Of course, I have link, soft link to version 6 of H5 dump. And I will use -H just to print header information. So H5.6 library can read it, but as well as H5 dump from 1.8 release and H5 dump from 1.10.5 release. And just to make sure that it's the right, I use -v to find that it says H5 dump version 1.10.5. So now let me try to compile this application, which is clearly 1.6 application. I will try to compile with H5C C10, and I will do GC, and of course I didn't specify that's current directory. You see many errors that I'm getting, and usually the error you will see too few arguments to function and function name. So how I overcome this? Instead of just using H5CC, I will specify compiler flag H5 use, and I know that it's 1.6 APIs, and I specify this flag. If I'm dealing with something versioning with 1.8, there will be flag H5 use 1.8 APIs that you can use. And now I successfully compile this program. You see, I'm using new version of the library, so I created new version of the file, and so I haven't run it yet. So I created new version, and I can show you I saved from my previous runs 2 versions of the file created with 1.6 and 1.10, and please see the difference in the sizes. So the file I saved was from the 1.10 group. I'm jumping ahead myself. I'm not here. I'm not there yet. So what we finished, we compiled the program, which is 1.6 with 1.10, and the trend. It created the file. This is a file that I created, and I can show you that the new version of the library created a file that I still can read with 1.6. And here is H5 dump version 6 and -h, and I still can read this file. So I'm file format forward compatible. My new version of the library uses my application and creates version of the file that I still can read with my old programs. So now what can happen? And I have a program that is called GL, which has API that I decided, okay, I want to use new version of the library. I would like to exercise new features. And here, let me change, so it's fair. I will change it to L, and let's see what will happen. So I'm using now, once again, 1.10 version. Now I don't need this. I will use 1.10 version. Oh no, I need this, sorry. I need this flag because it's still other APIs are. So my program, even it uses new API from 1.8 release, other APIs are still 1.6. So I do need this flag to compile the file, but you will see that my file that I will create will be 3 times smaller, because I'm using new features of the library when I'm creating groups, and group storage is much more efficient in the latest versions of HDF5 library. So now let's compile it. So I'm using 1.8.6 application, but with one API, I'm invoking new features of the library, and it creates the file. And now I'm comparing the sizes of 2 files. And you see that file I created with this with set libver bounds setting to latest is almost 3 times smaller than the file created with original version of 1.6. That's why we encourage people to move to new releases, because you get advantage, you get enhancements that are coming with the new releases. Now, if I do H5 dump 10, I will be able to read this file, of course. But if I do 1.8, I will not. And what is embarrassing, what happened yesterday, I was trying like, okay, why it's not? We provide enable error stack flag that should print you error stack that comes from the library. And unfortunately, something happened. I still do not see error stack, so we'll fix it. Ideally, you should see why this happened, why you cannot open the file, and one of the messages in that error stack will give really good clue. So in order for me to read with 1.8, if I wanted still to use features of the library, but I want 1.8 to read it, what I will do, I will modify. So now let me see if I will just add here just new file. And I will use different API. Instead of saying latest, I will specify that I want file be 1.8 library should be able to read it. And this is how I will do it. So I will recompile the library, my application. I will run it. So now I will have 3 files. What did I do that I didn't have my file? Okay. I believe I modified it. Let's see what happened here. Because I compiled wrong program. Okay. And now when I run it, so I will have file which I created with the setting low boundaries to 1.8, and now H5 dump 8 will be able to read this file. Yes. So this is a short demo that shows you kind of troubles you can encounter in terms of file format, backward and forward compatibility, and APIs, and shows you that there are improvements in the library that you really can take advantage. Like in this example, it was file format. It was size of the file that was reduced. Those are files we created with 1.10 and with 1.8 being low boundary for the objects. So meaning that library went and created objects that were available to 1.8 library as the highest version at that time. Now I will go back to my presentation, and we have a few minutes to finish about roadmap. I hope you can see roadmap. Its font is slightly small here. Slides will be available, but the major point is that we committed to continue HDF5 series of releases until we fix performance problem, and we hope that in summer 2020 we will catch up with the performance in 1.10 and in 1.12, and we can tell you for sure, yes, please move to 1.10 or to 1.12. There will be no more releases of 1.8. We will continue to provide security patches and work on forward compatibility with 1.12. For example, this bug I showed you in H5 dump definitely should be fixed. With 1.10, we will have new release in November, 1.10.6, and then every May and November going following. We do not have any time estimate when we will drop 110, so definitely for the next 2-3 years we are supporting 110. And our main goal for the releases to address degradation of performance between major releases 1.6 and 1.10. We were making some improvements to VDS feature. We will provide with 1.10 public performance benchmark test suite that I'm asking you to provide use cases for us so we can watch our performance. And we are working on dynamically loaded virtual file drivers, like we will introduce drivers, connectors to cloud, to Hadoop system. We have Spark connectors. Those will come first built in, but in the future we're working on dynamically loaded, so libraries that stay more modularized. And we will keep adding security updates and bug fixes, and of course watching very carefully performance between the releases. Major release 1.12 is coming, and it is currently scheduled for September 2019. We will introducing new virtual object layer architecture, and we will be introducing external references and some enhancements that we are doing for parallel compression. And later on, we will be releasing different plugins, query and indexing, full swimmer, new VFDs. So stay tuned for 1.12. We will have series of seminars that will introduce those features. There will be discussions, and we will start with 1.12, and then we'll also have webinars on 1.10 features, drilling into specific issues. Just to end this presentation, I would like to point you to the future events. Webinar on 1.12 features is first one of the series, is scheduled for September 11th. So stay tuned. There will be announcement on forum. And Lori, do we have it in the chat?
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, it will be in the chat. Lori will help me. On September 17th and 18th, we will have a first European workshop for science and industry in Grenoble. ESRF is helping us to hold this workshop. It is free. Registration number is limited, so if you're interested, register now. And workshop will be followed by H5 Code Camp, and some best H5 developers are attending this camp. So if you are interested, please join, and you can find that more information on our website. And on October 6th, HDF5 will join Eclipse CS conference in New York. It's in Brooklyn, and there will be HDF5 workshop for using HDF5 in big physics experiments. And on November 17th, 22nd, we applied for HDF5 buff. It's proposed for Wednesday, I believe it's 19th. So if we got buff approved, we will be more than happy to see you there, and there will be announcement on forum if it's approved and which date, and we will be soliciting presentations for our buff, because we do want to hear from the community and find out about issues and success stories, etc. Now I have 6 minutes for questions.
Okay, and let me just announce too that we will, if we don't get to all the questions, or if you send us questions later, we'll write up answers and post them on the forum in a few days. So keep an eye out for that. So I will ask Alina the questions, and she'll answer off the cuff. You might get a more thorough answer later.
Right.
Okay, so the first question is from Thomas. He says his basic feature proposals regarding file opening, optional file descriptor, optional wide string file name never get tackled, though not complicated to do so. How can I enforce it?
Which one? For wide characters?
Optional wide string.
Oh, wide string. Here's first of all, we definitely aware of the problem, and we're trying to address this. I believe in 1.12 we're already lifting. There are changes to the library that will allow you to open the file with wide characters with UTF whatever, or especially for Windows. The issue is that I believe we have the answer on the forum, that we will need to do file format change to address all changes that are needed. For example, we store file names in the file format. So we are slowly working through those issues, and we will be glad if there is enthusiasts on the forum, in community, to work with us to solve it quicker. Please contact us. We need help because we have so many issues, and we're very well aware that it is one of them. But believe me, we're working in that direction.
Okay, next question from Werner. With a performance drop known degrading from 1.8 getting to worse in 1.10, will the 1.8 support be kept until all such cases are known and fixed in 1.10, such that 1.10 is at least as fast as 1.8?
Yes, absolutely. That's why we know cases where already we have dropped, and we want to know more about other cases. So when we put our fixes, and I can tell that it's not one specific change in software that causes a drop. It's accumulation of many changes, 1%, 2%, 3% that cause the dramatic drop. That's why we need more use cases, more test cases, so we can notice performance drop when we test. And we put in special framework to catch it early, because to catch 1% drop in performance when you are using busy system is very hard. So we're working on special framework that will allow us to do this. Yes.
Okay. Question from Gregory. If someone gives me a file that they're having problems reading, what tools can I use to determine the version of the library that I need to use in order to read the file? In other words, how do I find versions of the file or objects within that file?
So the best thing is to try the latest version of the library, because first of all, file may be corrupted. That's why no one can open it. Unfortunately, there are no good tools except H5 debug. It's a very low level tool, but it still doesn't give you all information. So the only way to find out what is wrong, really, to start debugging with the latest version, or with the version that cannot open it, debug and understand what is going on. We're trying to put in 1.8 and 1.10 mechanism that library will fail gracefully on the objects that are not known with a reasonable error message. So once again, if you have such files, please send it to us. It will help us to improve maintenance releases to be forward compatible and fail in graceful manner.
Okay. In 1.10, is there a tool to create a cache image like the opposite of H5 clear?
It is done only through APIs. You have to trigger, and we will talk about those when we talk about 1.10 features in our webinars.
Okay. Another question is, Windows VFD still planned for 1.12 as mentioned in some former roadmaps?
We started working on Windows VFD, but we cannot finish it for 1.12. And there was work done, so definitely it will be better on Windows, but it is not really VFD that uses Windows-specific codes. It still uses some POSIX, complies with POSIX codes, and we want to get from that.
Okay, so the next question, first they ask, can they get a copy of slides? We will be posting that on the forum. Second, is there a way to query, preferably without having to have the newest version of HDF5 compiled, the minimum version of HDF5 that can open a given file that I'm given, for example, by a collaborator who produced the file with their favorite version of HDF5 and H5 version latest set?
Unfortunately, no, and I acknowledge that we need to have this tool, and it's not very hard to create. And our first step in this was the document you have linked to on the slides about which API trigger which versioning microversioning of the objects. So looks like it should be high priority.
Okay. So you have two questions, and I'll give you the option of which to answer because we're running out of time. One is asking any hope of getting some journaling or resilience of code crashes, and the other is, do you expect full swimmer support? to be available in 1.12, and what do you mean by that in contrast to what's available by 1.10?
Okay, so I will try to answer both questions. First of all, if you use current swimmer, it assures some crash proofing for HDF5, but still it's not enough. We have journaling feature that sits in feature branch that in theory can be merged, and we estimate that it's order of magnitude of 5-6 months of work to put journaling into HDF5. So this will be a slow feature. We're working on the new version of Swimmer Access, which will be more robust and will prevent loss of data, loss of metadata when a file, when application crashes. We're planning, if that solution works, we're planning to remove current implementation of Swimmer, which is limited only to appending data. It will be full Swimmer that allows modification of the file and usage of variable length data types, and it should assure, once again, it will avoid the corruption of the file, but some raw data still will be lost. Stay tuned.
Okay, so that's all for questions. There are several we didn't get to, as well as comments that I'll show to Elena when she's doesn't have the spotlight on her, and we'll get those on the forum shortly.
Yes, thank you, and we'll provide more comprehensive answers to the questions. Thank you so much for your attention.
All right, thank you, everyone. We hope to see you next in September at our next webinar.
Yes.
Good.